the summer of 2025, Guangzhou's, China's powerhouse in the south, stopped resembling a modern commercial hub and instead looked like a city under siege. Military convoys poured into its streets, their steel frames rattling against pavement meant for commuters and shoppers, not soldiers. The sight left residents unsettled. Armored trucks parked on bridges, riot police guarding intersections, and civilians filming quietly from apartment balconies. For decades, Guangzhou symbolized growth. Pedestrian streets bustled with shoppers, factories roared with exports, and the city's neon glow showcased China's rapid ascent. But in recent months, the atmosphere has changed. Shopfronts once full of international brands now display for lease signs. Tea houses that survived decades of ups and downs have shuttered, and even casual street vendors whisper about shutting down. The sudden presence of military vehicles is only the visible symptom of a deeper crisis. A freight artery choked, Poland slams the border shut. A shock decision in Central Europe sent tremors through Asia's logistics grid. In mid-September 2025, Poland fully closed its border with Belarus amid Zapad 2025 military drills by Russia and Belarus. The move severed one of the key land corridors between China and the European Union. Within days, more than 300 China-Europe freight trains were stranded in Belarusian territory, containers idle, contracts dangling, and delivery windows blown wide open. Polish leaders framed the closure as a security imperative, especially with attention fixed on the Suwałki corridor, NATO's narrow land bridge between Poland and Lithuania that would be critical in any wider conflict. As Russian drones reportedly probed Polish airspace, Warsaw tightened the clamp. Railway crossings, roads, and truck routes were shut. The land bridge for Chinese e-commerce giants Temu, Shein, and countless smaller exporters was gone overnight. Beijing's diplomacy moved quickly. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his forest counterpart for hours, urging a restart. Warsaw held the line. German rail operator DB Cargo, already under pressure from weak margins and shifting flows, warned of serious disruption but publicly supported Poland's security stance. Logistics analysts predicted expensive rerouting, more ocean freight, more air cargo, and far higher costs. The romantic idea of the Iron Silk Road ran headlong into geopolitical reality. Supply chains, as it turns out, are only as stable as the borders they cross: water, police, and the price of stability. A village in Wenzhou, hundreds of kilometers away from the gadget wars, a small village in Wenzhou, Zhejiang, learned what happens when rural resources collide with urban ambition. On September 8, 2025, in Changdian Village, Bilyin Town, Yongjia County, locals massed at the village gate with hand-painted banners. "Give our water back." They weren't asking for subsidies or special favors. They wanted to keep using the spring water their families had relied on for generations. Water they trusted, water they could afford. The plan on the table was simple for officials, costly for villagers. Shut the springs to local households and switch everyone to tap water at 3 yuan per ton, roughly 6 times the current outlay. Residents suspected a familiar story. Divert the high-quality spring to urban networks, sell the clean water upstream, and send the bill back to the countryside. That morning, around 200 police and security staff, led by a town leader, moved in to secure construction. Videos showed batons, shoving, elderly men and women knocked down, and at least 3 villagers hospitalized, one with a broken bone. By nightfall, the state's narrative had hardened. This was a riot, and construction would proceed under protection. The next day, machines kept working. Villagers limped home with bruises and unanswered questions. Changjian is not an anomaly. Across provinces, local governments battered by shrinking revenues reach for rural land, forest rights, and water to plug budgetary holes. Disputes may be local, but the pattern is national. Police enforce development, and people learn, once again, that stability maintenance tends to maintain someone else's stability. Funeral becomes a verdict: the death of Liu Mingao. When Liu Mingao, a young mother pregnant with her second child, was beaten to death, the official story tried to end before it began. On the night of August 21, 2025, her husband, Jin Hao, once praised as an outstanding party member and an employee linked to the procuratorate, allegedly assaulted her at home. By the time the family delivered Liu to the hospital, she was gone. Days later, a certificate emerged stating she had died of a heart attack. Her relatives refused to accept it. They forced a second autopsy. The findings obliterated the euphemism: blunt force trauma to the head, multiple fractures, extensive bruising, lung injury. The heart attack fiction unraveled. Meanwhile, police reportedly kept the victim's family from entering the home to gather evidence, even as Jin's mother moved freely, with accusations that she destroyed surveillance footage and cleaned the scene. As the scandal grew, the procuratorate abruptly reframed Jin Hao, not a solid cadre after all, but merely a temporary dispatch worker. On August 29, thousands flooded Liu's funeral procession. Roads were blocked, plainclothes officers dotted the crowd, and social media posts vanished almost as fast as they appeared. The mourning turned into a collective verdict, not simply for a murdered woman, but against a system that bends truth to protect insiders. If brutality can be laundered into heart failure, what justice exists for victims without families willing or able to fight? The return of poverty and why the party doesn't fear it. Some in China now speak of a prophecy, from foreign soothsayers to China's own folklore, that the Communist Party and its leader could fall together by 2026. Whether one entertains prophecy or not, the underlying anxiety is real. The economic model is cracking. The property boom, once marketed as destiny, has curdled into a debt trap. Apartments became lottery tickets, home buyers became mortgage prisoners. By 2025, price declines of just over 10% vaporized an estimated 15 trillion yuan in household wealth, and real estate now makes up roughly 70% of household debt. Second-hand markets led the plunge, spurring fire sales, breeding panic. When your home is worth less than your loan, you don't spend, you freeze. So why, many ask, does the party appear relatively unafraid of a downturn that would terrify most governments? Because its survival isn't anchored in prosperity, it rests on a pyramid of control. A small elite of perhaps 10 million who truly allocate resources, a much larger layer of tens of millions of functionaries tied to the system by salary, status, and fear, and the vast remainder who are kept fragmented, surveilled, and exhausted. The state extracts from its most useful demographic, roughly 300 million urban residents with steady incomes and tax footprints, siphoning money through taxes, fees, land finance, and quasi-monopolies. That pool funds the stability apparatus, police, state security, armed police, surveillance grids, the propaganda complex, state media, algorithm-tuned platforms, a military-industrial build-out, the united front abroad, and transactional diplomacy. From the Pacific to Africa, it's not governance in a social contract sense, it's systematic extraction. A flourishing economy helps. But it's not required if you can keep the public disorganized, misinformed, and afraid. Better to muzzle big tech than risk independent public spheres. Better to tolerate higher unemployment than permit free association. In that calculus, growth is negotiable, control is not. Generational tightening when young people choose austerity. One of the most striking social turns of 2025 is psychological, not merely financial. After years of buy today, earn tomorrow, millions of young Chinese have embraced extreme frugality. They film lunch boxes of tofu and cabbage, boast about refusing takeout, recycle children's clothes, and post saving challenges that trend for weeks. Couples structure savings into rolling bank certificates. Families keep household spending under 1,000 yuan a month through sheer discipline and side hustles. They call it practical. It's also political in a quiet way. To save is to opt out of a consumer script, heavily promoted as patriotic and modern. It is a hedge against hospital bills, joblessness, and sudden rules. It is a vote against illusion, a refusal to pretend the future looks like the past. The state can delete posts. It can't delete empty wallets. One local office worker, supporting a family on 5,000 yuan a month, explained his dilemma. Mortgage payments, school fees, and medical bills left him with little more than spare change. He insisted he was no activist, no agent of foreign influence, just one of millions trying to endure. Yet what he witnessed was undeniable. Soldiers moving through the heart of the city, patrols blocking bridges, and helicopters circling low. "It's not a rumor," he said. "It's happening in front of our eyes." Authorities claim these deployments are for stability maintenance, a phrase Beijing often uses when tension runs high, but insiders hint that the real trigger was economic breakdown. Factories in Guangdong province have collapsed by the thousands, leaving workers unpaid and angry. Officials fear that demonstrations could snowball into full-scale unrest. The army's arrival is less about prevention and more about suppression. The scale of Guangzhou's economic decline is staggering. Haizhu Square, once a hive of commerce, now looks like a deserted plaza. Local business associations estimate nearly 500 closures every single day in the city. Online videos show entire malls eerily empty, escalators moving with no passengers. Even large supermarkets have thinned, their shelves half-stocked as customers vanish. This is not limited to Guangzhou. In Suzhou, global investors have abruptly pulled out, leaving industrial parks in limbo. In Dongguan, factories that once earned the nickname World's Workshop now stand silent, gates chained shut. Beijing and Shanghai, though politically insulated, are also showing cracks as small and medium enterprises collapse. Despite all this, official figures insist unemployment is just 5.2%. The truth is harder to hide. Labor economists estimate that real unemployment is at least double, especially among the young. More than 12 million graduates entered the job market this year alone, called by many the toughest job season in Chinese history. Elite graduates, even those returning from overseas universities, are unable to secure stable positions. Delivery apps and ride-hailing platforms, long the fallback option, are now overcrowded. Surveys suggest that nearly 1 in 3 couriers holds a bachelor's degree. Meanwhile, the lives of officials remain untouched. Civil servants continue to receive stable salaries and even bonuses. Reports of corruption surface weekly, district leaders buying luxury homes with public money, tax officers pocketing millions in bribes. They drive government cars, eat lavish banquets, and send their children abroad, while ordinary citizens trim grocery budgets to the bone. For many, the contrast feels like salt rubbed into a wound. Guangzhou's history is dotted with small uprisings, from local disputes over parking fees to mass protests after violent encounters with urban management officers. Each time, the government deployed police to quell unrest and censored coverage to prevent nationwide sympathy. Each time, resentment deepened. Today, the military presence across the city signals how fragile the silence has become. The city, residents say, is like a volcano, its surface deceptively calm but its pressure mounting. Lying flat was once an escape, one young man explained, referencing the passive resistance trend among disillusioned youth. But lying flat is not enough anymore. People want dignity, they want freedom, and they are starting to demand it. The unease in Guangzhou is mirrored in places far from the southern coast. In Shandong province, anger erupted in a way that shocked even seasoned observers of China's cycles of protest. On a tense September afternoon, dozens of veterans surrounded a local police station in Zibo city, demanding payment and accountability. Videos leaked online showed men in camouflage standing shoulder to shoulder at the station's iron gate, their voices rising in unison as officers inside the building refused to engage. The spark was almost trivial compared to the scale of national problems. A private school had recruited over 100 veterans as drill instructors for students, asking them to cover their own food and lodging with the promise of wages to follow. After just 5 days, the school abruptly declared bankruptcy, leaving the veterans unpaid and humiliated. When one school official was taken into the police station for questioning, he never re-emerged. Convinced that the authorities were shielding him, the veterans blockaded the entrance and demanded answers. Reinforcements soon arrived. 78 police vehicles, dispatched from neighboring districts, surrounded the crowd. Though no full-scale clash erupted, the incident illustrated the brittle relationship between the state and those who once wore its uniform. Veterans, long considered pillars of loyalty, now felt betrayed. "I was wrong to join the army. I was wrong to join the party," shouted one man in a separate protest earlier in Jiangsu. His bitter words echoed the feelings of thousands who had served, sacrificed, and been discarded. The grievances of China's veterans are not new. Since the 1990s, countless men and women discharged from the army have petitioned for benefits and jobs promised but never delivered. In 2016, tens of thousands marched to Beijing to surround the Central Military Commission. Their demands forced the creation of the Ministry of Veterans Affairs. But instead of relief, what followed was tighter surveillance. Veteran leaders were arrested, online groups dismantled, and gatherings broken apart. In Pingdu City in 2018, peaceful protests ended with baton charges and pepper spray, hundreds dragged away and forced onto buses back to their hometowns. When men who once carried the flag now cry out in despair, insisting their years of service were a mistake, it reveals fractures the government struggles to hide. The facade of unity is crumbling from within, leaving questions about who will defend the system if loyalty itself evaporates. If veterans feel abandoned, China's youth feel trapped. The younger generation, once branded as ambitious and consumption-driven, is adopting survival tactics that look more like wartime austerity than modern living. Social media platforms are full of videos titled "Saving Challenges" and "Daily Frugality Check-ins." Young workers proudly show viewers how they avoid restaurants entirely, never ordering delivery, and living on cabbage stews cooked at home for $1 a meal. Clothes are worn until they fall apart, children's toys are recycled, gifts, and families set strict rules forbidding takeout or branded goods. One office worker in Beijing documented his daily routine: lunch of tofu and pork costing barely more than $1, dinners made from leftover vegetables, and a refusal to spend even on group meals with colleagues. "Why waste 100 yuan on one night out," he asked, "when that money can feed my family for half a month?" The phenomenon has been called revenge saving. For years, consumer culture was encouraged as a sign of national strength. Now the pendulum has swung. Groups of young people form online clubs to encourage each other to stash away small amounts every month. Some families buy fixed-term paper certificates at banks, rolling them over each year to maintain a cycle of savings. One couple with 3 children, living on 15,000 yuan a month, keeps their expenses under 1,000 yuan through sheer discipline. The wife collects cardboard to exchange for eggs while her husband works double shifts. Defenders say this is not stinginess but rational survival. In a society where jobs are unstable and medical bills can bankrupt families, saving is the only form of security. The change in mindset is profound. Once labeled reckless spenders, young Chinese now embody a new kind of austerity. Their quiet frugality is itself an indictment of the system, a silent vote of no confidence in the country's economic future. What ties veterans and youth together is a sense of betrayal. Veterans feel cheated out of the dignity their service should have guaranteed. Young people feel cheated out of the future they were promised. In both cases, the result is the same: despair channeled into defiance, and a population increasingly willing to say aloud what once was whispered. No one should mistake outward calm for equilibrium. The past decade perfected a machinery for preventing horizontal ties. Labor with labor, village with village, city with city. That's why eruptions appear isolated. Yet grievances now rhyme. Resources diverted, justice denied, wages shrinking, prices rising, truth smothered. Volcanoes don't erupt because of one rock. They erupt because pressure stops having places to go. Will this culminate in the collapse that prophets predict? History rarely obliges precise timetables. What is clear is the trade-off the leadership has chosen: preserve control at the expense of growth, legitimacy, and trust. In the short run, it works. In the long run, mistrust is compound interest. It accumulates quietly across villages, checkout counters, factory floors, funeral lines. until one day it looks like fate.